It is so great to see you. I hope I didn't scare any Judys in the room. Any Judys in the room? Judy, it is great to see you. How are you doing and how was your vacation? Oh, Mr. Hackett, it's great to see you too. Thank you for coming today. Robert, this produce section looks fantastic. Thank you so much for all of the work that you all do, you and this team, to help take great care of our customers. Mr. Hackett, it's great to see you too as they share a warm handshake. You see, those are the types of greetings that would happen whenever Mr. Hackett, who was the former president of one of the Kroger divisions, a company that my husband worked for as well and retired from, but whenever he came for store visits, went around the store, those were the types of greetings that you would hear everywhere, in every store, every time. Now, who in the world would be happy for their division president to come to their store for an inspection? Doesn't seem to make sense, does it? But Mr. Hackett, he had a relationship with employees. He cared about them first and foremost as human beings, as individuals. He knew their names. He knew their families. He knew a lot about their stories. He also was emphatic about making sure that he and the company lived up to the company's values. Mr. Hackett began his career with the Kroger Company when he was just a young teenager as a bagger. Anybody else start their careers that way? Yeah, I was in the deli department. That was my first job outside of babysitting, was in the deli department. And he worked his way up to division president. Even with all of his success, he led with consistency, with genuine motives, with great humility. He led with authentic influence. And today, we're going to talk about how you can have and lead with the same. It was wonderful to hear from SHRM, this morning, our national organization. And it is really just crazy what we are all dealing with these days with the turnover tsunami, the great resignation, all of these terms that we hear that describe the environment that we're in today. How many of us are experiencing the great resignation here, this turnover tsunami? Yeah, it's pervasive. And, the retiring, as our speaker just a few minutes ago talked about the retiring workforce for a number of reasons that they are leaving the workforce. And we're going to look at some of those too specifically here in just a moment. But a turnover rate of 30%, Johnny Taylor tells us that, and from the SHRM research, could be the norm that we're dealing with. How do you deal with that? So what we have to do is create different workplaces and different environments to be able to retain employees. So what are some of the things that are driving employees away? As we look at different research, and you may have seen the SHRM spring issue that came out that was HR Under Pressure. Anybody see that issue? There was an article in there that talked about all the stress that HR is under, but also it talked a lot about, too, some of the research that's showing why employees are leaving companies and why that's creating so much additional stress for each and every one of you here today. You can probably relate to many of these. Work overload. Control, not feeling like I have that control or autonomy over my work, over the things that I do every day. That I'm not necessarily getting constructive feedback, nor necessarily the recognition that I need to be able to feel like I'm valued and that my work actually has meaning. Workplace community is also important, feeling like you're belonging there and you have people at work who care about you, that I have friends at work, and that I am in an environment where I am treated fairly. How many of these can you relate to? Any of these in some of the survey feedback that you see as well? Yeah, so we see that. So, what is going to help us to retain those employees? When we think about the kind of workplace employees want, that helps to make our workplace sticky. It goes beyond compensation. It goes beyond work-life balance and flexibility, which we know are important and are not necessarily new. It goes beyond just being able to again work at home or have this hybrid environment. But look at the values. Values are important. An organization that has values, that shares my values. So understanding my values are really important too. Making sure we live and demonstrate our values is important. We're going to talk about more about that as well. That sense of belonging, inclusiveness. As our speaker earlier talked about, also just being able to bring in new and different ideas are also part of that. The fact that there is leadership that leads in a different way, that is empathetic, that has a concern for my and overall employee and customer well-being. That I have opportunities to develop my skill set, and that my employer is investing in my development and growth so that I can contribute in meaningful ways. Even sometimes if it's not here, but you're helping me to grow in my life as well. And then there are investments in technology with AI coming, as we just heard, that help us to do our jobs well, be efficient and constructive. Are these familiar to you? Have you seen these as well? Yeah, for the kinds of workplaces that we want to create. So my promise to you today is that we're going to work on strategies that help you get off the hamster wheel of trying to constantly recruit talent, though we still want to use our partners when we have those needs, but we don't want to have them every day. Okay, you have to have them every day. But that you get off that hamster wheel, that cycle, where you have a workplace where people want to stay, where they tell other people about what a great place this is to work and to be. We want to improve your culture. We want to give you the strategies to have greater influence and to be able to affect your organization so that there's greater authentic influence in your organization. I have a number of resources for you today. So here's a QR code. There's also a link, but I'll be talking about some strategies you can use and sharing some resources to help you apply some of those strategies. So you'll see this QR code show up a couple of times, and it's the same one when it comes to resources. But again, these are to help you to be able to apply what we're talking about today. I'm also going to ask for your involvement and your input. This is going to be a working session. You're with me for 90 minutes. And I don't know about you, but I teach at the University of Louisville in the College of Business. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. Anybody know people been to Louisville, Kentucky? Yeah, great. All right, great place. Great place. Muhammad Ali from Louisville, Kentucky. Louisville Slugger, and you have to come to the Kentucky Derby. Just saying. All right. So we are going to learn together, and I tell my students, I teach an evening class, so we're together for 2 hours and 45 minutes. Said, you don't want me to talk at you, and I don't want to talk at you, is what I tell my students. So I want you to engage, and sometimes it's hardest to get some of those young people who are coming to class each and every week to engage and to talk. but I know that you have a lot of experience to share, and we want to get that collective knowledge and intelligence in this room and share your experiences and your ideas. You game? Okay. All right, let's go. This is my mantra. Something that in my work with organizations, as I do training, as I speak, as I do coaching and team coaching, is to help employers build better leaders and better workplaces so that we can have a workforce, employees who can genuinely say, this is a place where I love to work and I feel valued. How many of us can say that our employees are there right now? Anybody? We need some of those and more of those role models. But it's also a journey. For those of you who raised your hands, it's not a constant state or a destination that you get to, is it? We are all humans. As leaders, as HR professionals, as organizations, we're living and breathing. Everything is changing. There's so many dynamics affecting us all the time. We have to connect to and think about the humanity. Think about the people who are in our organizations, who work for us, who commit to us, who we want to invest in to help them grow and to become their best so that we can serve the wider stakeholder community and our clients and our customers in ways that add value each and every day. And we can only do that if we have, as Angel and I were just talking about as before we got started, if we have a workplace where we are focused on employee experience, employee engagement, creating better leaders and better workplaces. You agree? Yeah, that's going to help us a lot. I do some work with UKG, Ultimate Kronos Group, and by and large, no matter who I talk to, who I work with, and whether it's on the Ultimate software side or the Kronos side, and those two companies, if any of you use UKG software, you'll use that platform. So they came together and formed one company just a few years ago. But even the experience in either company and as they have come together really demonstrate this best places to work type of workplace where they do come to work and they feel valued. And people have been there for a long time. That has changed, hasn't it? Where in my generation and my parents' generation, my husband retired from the Kroger company. He was there for 34 years. We just don't have that in the environment anymore. So we're looking for how can we be sticky for as long as we can and engage employees in a way that makes them want to be with us and to contribute in our organization. We want to be like a UKG. As we get into this topic of influence, and I did a lot of research in writing the influence book, ATD, the Association for Talent Development, was producing a soft skills series and reached out to me about writing one of the books. And I selected the topic of influence because it is so important for us as leaders, for us as professionals. And so that's really what we're going to dig into here today. How do we build that skill set? And I want to start by thinking a little bit more about what influence is and what that means to you. This is where some more of the participative part begins. What does influence mean to you? When you hear that word, how would you describe influence? What would you say? Sorry? All right, having a seat at the table, and that's what I work on with HR a lot, and we need influence to have that seat at the table. Absolutely. Okay, hang on one second. Yes, being able to make things happen through others. That's right, how we influence others' behaviors. Presenting an opportunity for change, which in our roles, aren't we doing that a lot? Yeah, that's where you are, putting your role on each and every day. What else? What else do you think about when you think about influence? Modeling the behavior. Don't you? We can all remember. You think about parents to children. Do as I say, not as I do. And the kids who are always running around saying things that they shouldn't say, I don't know where they got that. So we want to model the behavior that we want to see in others. That genuine, that authenticity. Gaining buy-in from others. Absolutely. All of these reflect what influence reflects and how we can demonstrate and embody that influence. The good thing is, it is a skill set that we can develop and grow. We can work on our influence. All right, now I want to ask you, given now what we know about influence, and we're still learning, but how good do you think you are at influence? And we're going to do a show of hands here. So from 1 to 10, or 0 if you feel like you're really a novice, but probably no zeros in this room, I would imagine. But I want to see on your hands, and just raise your hands from a scale of 1 to 10, how good or experienced do you think you are at influence? What do you think? Now, this is a safe space. We can be honest. Yeah, okay. So, varying degrees. And sometimes it probably depends on the day, wouldn't you say? Yeah. And the audience. Yeah. And the audience. So, it is variable. And how can we stabilize that a little bit more? All right. So, some good experience, some opportunity for growth. My next question for you is, are you an influencer or are you influential? Now, here's what I'm going to have you do. In just a moment, I'm going to ask you to stand. And I'm going to ask you first, stand if you are an influencer. Then I'm going to ask you, stand if you are influential. Then I'm going to ask you to stand if you are both. Then I'm going to ask you to stand if you are neither. Then I'm going to ask you to stand if I have no idea. I have no idea. No idea. All right. So stand if you are, and we'll talk more about what these terms mean. I always get the question, what's the difference? That's just given what you think right now. We're going to talk more about these terms. But if you are an influencer, please stand. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. If you are influential, please stand. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. If you are both an influencer and influential, please stand. Okay. And if you are neither an influencer or influential, stand. You can be courageous in this room. Okay. All right. Okay. And I don't know yet. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I don't know yet. Yeah, that's okay because we're learning and we're going to talk a lot about that. That's a little bit of a trick question. It's a little bit of fun. I have a lot of fun with that question. So when we think about influencer versus influential, I want you to think about influencer, and the truth of the matter is we are all each of these at points in time. And influencers, there are days, there are times, there are meetings, there are audiences. I just need to move you right now. And we really have to put on our influencer hat on those times. And there are times, though, even if we want to be more effective at those, I just need to move you right now times, we need a deeper influence. That's where becoming influential and being an influential person really comes into play. We're going to look at more of this and get into more of this. Oh. Can HR be influential? Okay, so we're going to explore this question today, and I have some questions for you to discuss with a partner here right now as we think about it. All right, so why is influence important in HR? And what is in the way of becoming viewed or being influential? I want you to discuss with a partner, or if you're in groups of three, feel free to trio up. But I want you to take a couple of minutes and discuss these questions. And then I want to come back and hear what some of your conversations were about. Okay? All right, now, in all of our conversations today, we have a limited amount of time. So, and we want to have each person in your groups have an opportunity to talk. So I'm going to ask you to make sure that you remember in your commentary to please be brief, be bright, and be gone. Is that a good deal? All right, be brief, be bright, and be gone. All right, so 2 minutes, I'll give you three. Talk about these two questions. All right, you have 1 minute to finish up. 1 minute. All right. We have so much great conversation going on in the room. And I love the energy. I love the energy that is here. Love the energy that is here. Now, do I have any Girl Scouts in the house? Any Girl Scouts? Okay. No, look, once a Girl Scout, always a Girl Scout. On my honor, I will try to serve God and my country, to help people at all times, and to live by the Girl Scout law. Okay. All right. So you probably remember the hand raise when all the girls are talking and the leader wants to get everybody's attention. So that's what we're going to use for from here on out when we have activities. Once you see my hand go up, then you raise your hand, and that also means to zip it. So it means time to get quiet, everyone. So we'll use that. It makes it a little bit easier for us to get back together. Now, I would love to hear from you. I know we had some incredible conversations going on. What did you talk about in response to these two questions? Why is influence important in HR, and what's getting in the way? Yes, ma'am.
So we talked about one of the influences is that we can shape the culture of the company perhaps. Like since we have to pick the employees to come to the company, we can see what kind of personalities are coming in and what can they bring, and I feel like that also shapes, the culture for us. And then I guess one of the ways that could stop is maybe the perception of outsiders, just because like okay, so I'm new in HR, but I've always heard like, oh, you're an HR. And I'm like,
Yes. Let's take a step back a little bit. Shut their mouths a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You have the opportunity to shape the culture. But what's getting in the way?
That we feel like maybe the perception of others, perhaps maybe it's like, oh, why did you, I don't know, hire this person over this, or why are you, what are your rules like, and why are you doing these things? So that's kind of what we talked about a little bit.
Yeah, good. Thank you for being a first brave soul to
Thank
share in
you.
this exercise. You're welcome. And I need to sign that for you, so make sure you see me afterwards. All right, what else? What else did you all talk about? Okay. Oh, this is going to be a great group.
Oh, I don't know.
All right. Yeah, all of us.
I
A
want
lot
to
to
build upon that a
share.
little bit. We also talked about the culture, but also having an influence on the community. So sometimes we may not always be able to choose salaries or give raises, but building programs, employee recognition,
Mhm.
wellness, volleyball, basketball tournaments, lunch and learns, and helping build that community, it's a little harder for people to leave.
Yeah, great. Building community. And that's what we need to build in the workplace. Yeah, a sense of belonging. That helps with
Yes.
all of that belonging. I have a place where I love to work because we do so many wonderful things. Let's see. Yes, sir.
So my group talked about how HR is important because they set the bar with best practices. Things that might get in the way of that would be if senior staff considers them as butting in, or if you have a lot of different types of companies that report to you, there isn't one just best answer.
Ah, okay. It can get quite complex,
Yeah.
but you help to set the stage around that and bring a lot of your insight and expertise to the table around those important decisions. So, anybody else? We'll take one more. I know we could talk all day on this one. All right, I'm gonna go right here. Yes, ma'am.
We kind of talked about more so being on the outside and being a liaison between the employees and the employer. So
Hmm.
kind of being influential to get them on the same page as long as they have the same goals and
Yeah,
goals.
and helping them to see that they have the same goals. So being that liaison between the employee and leadership or the company or supervisors, and helping to find that common goal. In fact, I'll tell you briefly. I was in a conversation. I was working with a company. It was a reception the night before a leadership development program I was going to be doing with them the next day. And having seen in my bio, and he mentioned, "Oh, I see that you are one of the HR influencers from Engagedly." And so he asked me the question, "Who is HR for? Are they for the employee? Are they for leadership? And how do they straddle the fence?" So I appreciate what you brought up because people are thinking about that too, and they're looking at HR around that question. They're looking at HR around that question. So this is really important for us to think about, because as we think about the important role that we play in everything that we do, what's getting in the way of that? How do we overcome that? How do we move past and move through those? So let's talk about how we use influence in becoming more influential, in trying to affect the organization in all the ways that you have described. And much of the time, we, in our influencer role, again, when I need somebody to move or need to influence and change behavior, but there's some things that we need to do and make happen more right now, we depend on these influence tactics. And a lot of the research that we've seen from Claudio Fesser, from Robert Cialdini, that give us strategies around persuasion, around likability, around using credibility, rationality, using data, all of those things that help us to persuade or move the needle to be that influencer. We are all going to need and utilize these tactics at points in time. They're part of our toolkit. They're part of our toolbox of influence. But we want to be careful and mindful not to just depend on that toolbox of influencer strategies. We need to have a deeper level of influence if we're going to make the degree of impact that you have described that is so important for HR. So I want you to remember that. And how do we grow that deeper level? We are going beyond persuasion. This is another one of my mantras. Influence is more about how you live than just what you do. Influence is more about how you show up and engage and interact every day, not just what I pull out of my toolkit when I need it. I don't know about you, but when somebody shows up or calls me, and the only time I hear from them is when they need something, how does that make you feel? You like those calls or those visits? Yeah, none of us do. So I think about that as an analogy. It goes deeper than that. So in my research, I found that organizations and individuals, leaders, professionals, HR professionals, talent development professionals, and leaders who have greater influence, who are seen and demonstrate being influential, demonstrate these 5 core principles and related practices around these and characteristics around these. The first is social capital, how I invest in the relationship, how I give, not expecting anything in return, but knowing that karma is going to come back to me. And I also have to communicate the value that I'm adding, because sometimes people don't necessarily connect the dots, and they don't necessarily see us as business knowledgeable in HR necessarily and contributing to the goals of the business. So all that's wrapped up in social capital. Courage is what you have to do a lot of days where there are tough decisions, there are tough conversations, uncomfortable situations that we are in, having to be the person who may have a different opinion and speak up. That's what courage is all about. Authenticity is the third principle, and that really is where we're going to dig in today. And that is about really bringing that our authentic selves, in a professional way. Leaning in with passion means that we are connected to the business goals. We are connected to their why. We are connected to our why. And we're going to lean in with everything we've got around that. And then the fifth influence principle is engaging a diverse and inclusive workplace community. So the community that you talked about, the engagement, the inclusiveness, the bringing in all of the ideas. When you use this framework, really think about this framework for becoming influential, then you have a greater opportunity for a greater credibility, for that seat at the table, for greater impact as human resources professionals and leaders. Today, our focus is going to be on digging more into authenticity. Now, isn't this a beautiful picture of a chameleon? You know, I should have used the picture of me. I was speaking for the School Nutrition Association conference in Florida back a few months ago, and I had some time before my flight, so I was just relaxing by the pool a little bit before I had to take off to go to the airport. And I don't like lizards. Anybody else like you? I don't like I don't like lizards. You know, and here comes this lizard running around my chair, you know, just kind of everywhere. So I ended up taking a picture of it. But, you know, chameleons, though, they are quite the reptile. They can change their skin color when they need to regulate their body temperature, when they need to protect themselves. They have these long projectile tongues also that come out when they need to catch their prey so that they can eat. How many of us can think of people who remind us of chameleons? Anybody? I can think of a few of those. Hopefully it's not you. But so when we think about authenticity, authenticity really is the opposite of that. When we look at Merriam-Webster and the words they use to describe authenticity, they use words such as, you know, you're bringing yourself, thinking about your character, consistency, you know, things like that, where we are showing up in a way that is truly who we are. So many people don't think of human resources as being authentic. Would you agree with that? I don't know who's going to show up. I don't know what I can say to you or how I need to protect myself, no matter what side of the employee or employer you're working with or talking to. They don't necessarily see you as authentic. Let's dig into this description of authenticity a little bit more. And I want you to think about a brand or a product, maybe, or service that you consider authentic. And I want you to think about what are some of those characteristics that make it authentic. I'm going to have you put your ideas on a discussion board. You can scan the QR code here, or you can go to the link. There's a tiny URL link, SHRM AI, for authentic influence. And on that discussion board, when you get there, and I'll show you that in just a moment, you'll see a sheet of paper, you know, it's got a colorful background. In the bottom right-hand corner, you will see a circle, a pink circle that has a plus sign in it. You want to click on that plus sign. It's going to open a dialog box for you. And that dialog box, if you would, in the subject area, put your name. And then it's going to have a statement that says, like, write something incredible or something like that. And that is where you can put your comments. There's also an icon on there for, like, adding a photograph or a GIF if you want to make your post a lot of fun. So you can go there. There's the link or the QR code. And when you get there, you'll see how to add your post. And then you'll be able to see the other posts as they're being added as well. That's the one thing I love about this particular tool. All right, so I'll give you a minute. Think about, what is it for you? What is that brand? What is that product that for you really says authenticity? And what are the characteristics that make it authentic? What are those characteristics? Okay. I'm asking you some hard questions today. Anybody have any questions? Got it? So the QR code or tinyurl.com SHRM AI for authentic influence. SHRM AI. All right, I think everybody's probably got the QR code. We're going to take a look at what you've got here. There we go. Yeah, you're getting those images on there and make it fun. Oh, I flew Southwest Airlines coming here. Oh boy, look at that. Oh, no matter what went wrong, you hold true to your values. Thank you, Caitlin, for that. Staying true to yourself. All right, understanding. You know, my mother, we lost her back in November, but she would always tell us, get an understanding. There is, you know, you need an understanding. It is so important. There's nothing more important. Now, there are things that are as important, but it is important to get an understanding. Yeah, I'm an Apple fan. All of my products are Apple products. My computer, everything connects and works together. I just love that. HEB. So I love that and love all these characteristics. Assuming positive intent in all interactions, staying true to yourself authentically. Transparency, flexibility, inclusiveness, where everyone is accepted and allowed to be their true selves at church. Kendra Scott, brand design, quality, kind. Oh, their pieces. Great. So, you know, we can relate to this as we think about what are the things that we use and engage and interact with each and every day, and how do they speak authenticity to us. The other great thing I love about this tool is that this will be there. You know, I'll leave it, and you can come back to it and see what the entries were. All right, now let's connect what we experience when we use products and services. Think about different brands and connect that to human characteristics and human aspects of authenticity. So I want you to take a moment to think about a person who has been influential in your life or your career. How did they come across as being influential? And why in particular was that even important for you? Okay. 2 minutes to talk with a partner, 1 minute per piece. Be brief, be bright, be gone. All right, and then we'll do the Girl Scout call to attention when time is up. Good deal? All right, 2 minutes. Who has that been for you? Oh, it's never enough time, is it? It is just never enough time. Ah, I just hate that. But, I would love to hear from a couple of you. Who was it for you? And how did they show up authentically? Yes, ma'am. Tell me your name.
Hi, my name's Avery.
Hi, Avery.
So for me, it was someone in influence. He wasn't my direct boss, but he was in our leadership, and um, I felt like he was authentic just because he always was genuine and would still say the hard things and find a way to say it where it was feedback that you didn't walk out of an office feeling down about, but you felt like you can, okay, like I hear that part and I can grow from that, I can learn from that. And he just kind of helped me grow. He was also from New York. I'm from New York. I can be very direct, and sometimes it's not taken well
Yeah.
based on my delivery, which I'm working on. And he was very big on kind of helping me and also telling me, don't feel like you have to change necessarily who you are and how you communicate because of how other people may take it. So he just kind of helped me grow. And he's retired, and I'm now out of the Air Force, but we still stay in touch.
Yeah.
He became a mentor, and I think he was just so genuine all the time, and would put himself at risk for the people below him, which just made him, he's authentic. He was genuine.
Awesome, awesome. You talked about so many things, and when we think about the variables, make sure I'm on. When we think about the variables and the principles of influence that I talked about for you earlier, you mentioned so many of those characteristics in that person. The other one thing I want to add is that he helped you to learn about approach, and his approach. Even though you might be direct, and as New Yorkers. Now, one of the things that I try to emphasize, we'll talk about this a little bit when I talk about you want to be careful about being adaptable, not artificial. We'll come to that in a few minutes. But if your general approach is to enter a room like a bull in a china shop, every situation doesn't need you to come into the room like a bull in a china shop. So we have to be mindful of that and learn how to adapt. So I love that. One more example. Yes, ma'am. Your name is?
Sharon.
Sharon. Hi, Sharon.
Hi. Early in my career, I had a VP of HR that basically took me under his wing, shared everything, was very open, and one of the things that I took away from that was his philosophy to work with me, not for me.
Yeah. Oh, work with me, not for me. Working with me. Excellent. So critically important. And that person who is willing to add social capital for you, going back to so many of those variables and those principles of people who are influential that you found in these other people. And that was critically important for you to be able to connect, to thrive, be successful in and of your own right. So I heard from you many of these characteristics. In my research, I found that when it comes to authenticity, those individuals, like Mr. Hackett that I talked about earlier, who is still great friends with our family, genuine motives. It's not about me. I have genuine motives when it comes to other people. Great humility, and I'm consistent. People know who they're going to get when I show up. It's not a question about which person am I going to get today, or how is today affecting that person, and so how are they going to engage because they're feeling a lot of stress today. So there's that consistency. I know about who that person is, what they represent, and how they come to the table. I want to go back to UKG, Ultimate Kronos Group, for a moment. And one of the stories that I heard from UKG employees was about their former CEO on the Ultimate Software side, Scott Scher. And he realized one day that because their buildings were spread out, there was a particular person who was part of their maintenance staff who would have to walk across buildings, walk one building to another. And this was in Florida, and it was hot. and they had to go like at least a block, and didn't have transportation, and the company wasn't necessarily providing transportation for them to get to one building to another at that time. And so he and his wife bought this employee a car, bought them a car, had the empathy, saw the need, had genuine motives, didn't talk about it. Didn't bring it up, wasn't to get attention for them at all, had great humility around it, but just wanted to invest and help. And there were countless stories like that from their executive leadership. And part of the reasons why UKG is a place where employees love to work and they feel valued. All right, we're going to dig into a little bit more these authentic leaders and workplaces and the characteristics around authenticity in the workplace, what it looks like, what some of the challenges are that come up for it, and how it contributes to a better workplace. All right, so I'm going to divide this room into 6 sections. In your section, again, you can connect with maybe the same 2 or 3 people that you've been working with. So each section, if you're number 1 or if you're section 2, we're going to have multiple small groups within that section. And then we're going to go back to another discussion board, tinyurl.com/SHRMLW, and that's the QR code that gets you to that discussion board. So you're going to have just a few minutes to talk about your question. And then one of you in your group will go to the discussion board and add your comments, your responses, your thoughts, your insights around that question. You'll see your column, you'll see, and I'll put it up here in just a few minutes, but you'll see there are columns. Column 1 for those who answer question 1. There's a column 2, and you'll see the plus sign right under the header in your column where you will put your answer, okay? And it's the same thing. Click on the plus sign, it'll open the dialog box, you'll put your responses in. But only one person in your particular small group needs to do that for your group, unless there are some other things you want to add and just want to make sure that we hear. All right, and you're trying to be efficient with time. So I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to talk in your groups to answer your question, and then we'll put your responses into, and then we'll come back together. So section 1 will be these 2 rows. So again, you can divide it back into your small groups. Section 1, let's do section 2, these 3 rows. Section 3, these 2 rows. Section 4, these 2 rows. Section 5, these 2 rows, and section 6, these 3. Okay, so you 3 rows are section 6, section 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, all right. So there's your question based on your number. So have a conversation. So you can work in small groups still. You don't have to be one big group. Yeah, you don't have to be one big group. You can still work in your small group so we get a lot of ideas in a short amount of time. Okay. Yeah, so you can still work in your small groups so we get a lot of ideas in a small amount of time. Yeah. Yeah. Either way, but yeah, you can work in your small groups. Yeah.
you have a thought on it?
Like the diversity, because you have more.
One minute to finish up. You got 1 minute to finish up and get your post in.
Go back to the exhibit. Is there a recertification page for this?
There is. Yes.
I'm sorry.
All right, sections 4 and 5. Go ahead and get a post up there. All right, in groups, if you're, keep going. Go ahead and put your post up if you haven't already. We want to collect the ideas. They will live here. And so want to make sure that we get all the ideas that you came up with. So if you haven't already, you can go ahead and continue to add your posts. But I'd love to hear from section 1. One of the groups in section 1. What did you all talk about?
I'm Eliza. We talked about influence. Sorry.
Yeah. Why is it important?
My contacts are going to be crazy.
So
Okay.
number one is, why is it important for leaders to be authentic, to influence change, get buy-in, to motivate and encourage people, to build trust, to be an example, psychological safety, efficiency, and then without it, it creates a spirit of unknown.
Awesome. So many reasons. So like, why not? Right. It's so important. All right. So thank you for all of that list. All right. Section 2. Give me one group to tell me about what demonstrates that a leader is authentic. What demonstrates that? Section 2. One group in section 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
So some of the empathetic, some of the stuff, the characteristics that we've already
Yeah.
been talking
Okay.
about.
Mm-hmm.
Sharing info, so kind of that bringing others along with you,
Yeah.
being transparent, having some North Star why, even though that's going to shift based on the day and the human. Being inspirational, and then acknowledging that you're going through something too,
Mm-hmm.
but also balancing that with like checking that to be open to
Yeah.
what's coming in your door.
Absolutely. And balancing that, checking that. Yeah. Self-awareness is a big
Yes.
part of that. Yeah. As you described. Thank you all. All right. Section 3. Tell us about what gets in the way of leading with authenticity. We talked about this a little bit earlier. What gets in the way? Yes, sir. Ego.
And traditional perceptions of titles.
Yeah.
That there's levels. That I'm at the top
Mm-hmm.
or I'm not at the top.
Yeah. I posted on LinkedIn a post and asked for some HR executives to weigh in with their thoughts around the question, why is influence for HR such a hard nut to crack? And one of the people talked about, it's not position. You don't earn influence by your title, you earn it. And authenticity and all of the things that you all have talked about really come into play there. So yeah, and we have to be vulnerable. That's the other thing that's hard, isn't it? Thank you all. All right, section 4, we've got, what effect does authenticity have on a person's ability to be influential?
Well, we talked about when leadership practice what they preach. You know, that's a trickle down effect from top down management. And when they're willing to get into the trenches with you, we've all been in those situations where you feel like those responsibility, real responsibility. But when management's willing to get in the trenches with you, you feel a part of the team. It makes it a little more bearable and doable.
That's right. Yeah, get in there with me. Show that you care and that you're
We're a team.
helping us solve it together. Yeah, that's part of that engaging a diverse and inclusive community piece too. Outstanding. Thank you all. Magnificent. All right, section 5. What challenges can authenticity present in the workplace? Okay.
We can have a couple of different ones. The first one is it can be a challenge when others, you may be authentic, but when others are not willing to also be authentic, it can be hard to align. When someone's motives or intentions are not in the right place.
Yeah.
Being able to adapt. So you may be an authentic, influential individual, but also knowing how to, not be so rigid either because of your ways of doing things. Being able to adapt and listen to others.
Yes.
And just how, not being authentic really can damage that trust with others. And we talked about mismatched values.
Yes. Oh, mixed match values. I talk a lot about values. So excellent. You did a great job. All right. Excellent. Thank you for that. All right. And how does authenticity contribute to a better workplace, group or section 6?
I can take that one.
Okay.
So it just builds an environment of trustworthiness. So employees feel it's a safe space they can come to, be truly honest about how they're feeling, and not feel like they're going to get immediate reaction. Building relationships, inclusion, empathy, and in just general that leads to better mental health.
Yeah, awesome. Better mental health, inclusion, empathy, feeling like you have a psychologically safe space where you can come and discuss and share. And many times people don't think of HR that way, at all. I have to protect myself more than anything. So thank you for that. So, authenticity in the workplace, in our work environments is so important for us. And I have you think about this whole scale of questions around that, because it's not necessarily easy. And when we think about authenticity, again, going back to that bull in the china shop, that doesn't mean we come that way. But there's a level of professionalism that is important when we think about authenticity. When it comes to adaptability, we have to be able to read the situation, know what we're walking into, and adapt ourselves. So these are 3 keys, and the steps that you take to building authentic influence is discovering your authentic self, learn to be adaptable, not artificial, and to practice humility. And we're going to look at each of these briefly, spend a little bit more time on 1 and 3, a little bit. All right, so let's start with discovering your authentic self. So much of what I heard from you was about self-awareness. Self-awareness is critically important, and that's a big part of the problem. And in fact, I just posted an article on LinkedIn the other day. I think that was this week also, this week or last week, I can't remember which, but that talked about this as well, and these steps that we're talking about here today. And the fact that we don't know, emotional intelligence is important to be able to know where we are, what's affecting us, how things are affecting us, how we come across and affect other people, what's true for us. So if we take the time to take some assessments and use assessments, how many of you use different assessments in your organizations? You all use assessments, and several of these are similar in what they share. But I use a lot of assessments with my clients so that we start with that starting point of being self-aware. And when we understand ourselves, this insight can also help us to better understand our colleagues and who we are working with so that we can communicate better. We can come together and work better as a team. So, what are those characteristics that authentically reflect you? What is important for you when you think about those characteristics? Then you can actively think about, what is my reputation? And given what I've learned about who I am, do I have the kind of reputation that's important for me to have in my role and for me as a person, for who I want to be? How do my values align with what I say they are, with what I've learned about myself? How do they show up in my behaviors? Are they congruent? And how does what I've learned about myself help me to develop my leadership style and my professional style, my professional and my leadership practice? So all of that informs us, should inform us, and we can proactively think about and use that information in ways that help us to be more authentic, have greater influence in our roles. I come back to values a lot in everything I do. Whether I'm talking about influence, I'm working on Resilience Ready. This is so important because our values also ground us. So we can use assessments. We also need to take a minute to think about what's most important. What is my navigator in my life when it comes down to having to come back and recenter around, I'm in a tough situation. How do I show up? How do I engage? How do I adapt? Our values help to ground us there. I have a couple of resources for you that I want to tell you about. One is a value sort exercise that you can do individually, have people on your team, and then come together and talk about them. When I spoke at the talent conference, SHRM Talent Conference, somebody came up to me after my session and said, I've already downloaded this. I've sent it to each of my team members, asked them to fill it out. When we get back, we're going to sit down as a group and we're going to talk about this and work on this together. But values are meaningless unless they become alive, unless we see them. We have reminders of what they are, what they mean to us, and that we are demonstrating them in what we do and how we show up and engage every day. I love this app, QPixel, and the work that QPixel is doing to bring greater well-being, overall well-being, bring teams together, help to reduce stress, help us to use the more creative and innovative sides of our brain, versus we are often coming analytically as HR people. But QPixel helps you. I'm not an artist. When you're not an artist, you use the app to actually trace a visual. It can be a word, it can be a picture, and you can color that, and then you can put that together. Maybe all of your team puts their value statements or visuals together in a collage on the wall, so that you have a mosaic reminder of that. It helps to bring the team together. And just the activity of doing that and creating that artwork, creating those values, helps you to bring the team together and helps to reduce stress, helps you to come up with more creative ideas. So, and I have some contacts there. If I can introduce you to QPixel, let me know. But I love this activity as an exercise that you can do individually and with your teams. All right, your second key to authentic influence is learning to be adaptable, not artificial. And we've talked about that a good bit already. But, one of my coaching clients is an executive for a nonprofit. And when she took the role, she came in on the heels of another person who had moved on in that CEO role, who was very successful, very well respected. she is an African American female who was following this individual. And so she really had to think about and how was the world going to receive me? And how do I follow somebody who's been very successful and has been seen as very respected? So, how do I make sure that I can be authentic as I come into this role with who I am and the value that I bring? And adapt to situations and not try to be the person who just left this role, who I replaced. So, in all of our situations, when we're in stressful situations, it is hard for us to take a minute to think. Our survival brain, our amygdala kicks in and says, protect yourself, respond quickly. But we need to take a minute and take a breath and think about the situation we're in and really figure out, how do I adapt here and not be artificial, not be the chameleon. I want you to think about that chameleon in your mind when you think about being adaptable. So we like the way the chameleon adapts from a knowing the environment I'm in and adapting to that. We don't like the artificial nature of that can come across. So you can take that to some extremes, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. The third key to growing your authentic influence is to practice humility. When I talked about Mr. Hackett earlier, the just so humble, a leader that put the value of others and the people who are on the front lines making a difference each and every day, recognizing the value of their work, their commitment, they're showing up, they're talking to customers saying, how are you today? Did you find everything you need? Do you get that when you go through the grocery line sometimes? And when I first started hearing that, that was a surprise to me. Like, oh, you're asking me if, did I find everything I need? Yes, I did. But making those human connections. So it's important for us when we think about humility and how do we show up with humility? That arrogance, that ego that you talked about earlier. We have to release that. We have to be vulnerable to some degree. We are humble in the way we portray confidence. So it's not that we don't have confidence, we do, but we are humble in the way that we portray that confidence. And then it's our purpose, our why, our business partners' why, employees' why, that helps to center us and bring us back to why we're here and why we do what we do each and every day. Now, when we think about humility, I do want to warn you and make sure that you are aware of two extremes that we could fall into when it comes to humility. The first extreme is the imposter syndrome. And the imposter syndrome says that, when it comes to worth, value, and success, I am really undeserving. I'm lucky. I've been in the